This is shepherd's pie. It's a fantastic British-inspired meal that we're going to take to the next level with a few delicious ingredients. We're going to make a rich and meaty filling, sort of like a bolognese sauce, but way faster. Fantastic mashed potatoes, which we spread on top. We add a crazy amount of cheese on top and throw it in the oven. Frankly, it's just a fantastic meal. So let's get started by preparing our potatoes. I'm using just a basic starchy potato from my grocery store. I think a starchy potato works best in this recipe versus a waxy potato. I'm going to cut them down into smaller pieces, basically so that they boil faster. I'm cutting the potatoes into rectangles, about 1 inch long. They look like this. I'm going to peel the rest of the potatoes. I've got about 1 kilogram in total for this recipe. You might need a little more or less depending on the size of your baking dish. Once they're all peeled, put them in a bowl and we'll get a large pot of water. Heavily season the water with salt. Don't worry if you think this is a lot of salt. Most of it goes down the drain afterwards anyway. Add the potatoes to the cold water. Once it's boiling, reduce the heat so that the water stays simmering and cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. You want there to be very little resistance when you insert a knife into the potatoes, sort of like this. Now I'm draining the potatoes and I'm going to use my food mill to mash them. You can use any tool you like, whether it's a hand masher, a ricer, or a food mill like this. I just like the texture I get from this food mill. Once it's set up, add my potatoes onto the top, turn the crank, I guess you would call this, and the potatoes pass through little grates, creating nice fluffy potatoes on the other end. Make sure to get any pieces that didn't fall all the way through. To that, I'm going to add some butter. This will give us a really nice color on top of the finished shepherd's pie. We don't want to add as much fat as we ordinarily would if we were making mashed potatoes. Once the butter's incorporated, I'll cover it with plastic wrap and set it aside. Now we can move on to our sauce. We'll start with a mirepoix, which is basically just a fancy French word for diced vegetables that we use as the flavor base for our sauce. Starting by dicing an onion. I like trying to dice the vegetables as finely as I can. Good time for us to practice some knife skills. Next, I'll use some celery. Same idea as earlier. We're trying to keep everything about the same size. Next, we've got some carrots. Peel these and cut them down, again, to about the same size as the onions and the celery. I'm going to add some garlic as well. Not traditionally in the mirepoix, but I like it in this recipe. It's time to start cooking the sauce. I've got a large heavy bottom pot that I'm adding neutral flavored oil to, and I'm going to use ground beef. I know lamb is traditional in shepherd's pie, but I like the taste of the beef. Plus, it's a little hard to find ground lamb where I live. Once the oil is hot, add half of the ground beef into the pot and use a wooden spoon to start breaking it up. After cooking for about 6 minutes, we should see some browning and a nice fond forming on the bottom of the pot. I'm going to add the second half of my ground beef and we'll cook that. After 4 minutes, I can add my mirepoix vegetable and get them to start softening. I'm looking to cook out the water that's in the vegetables, not really brown anything at this point. After cooking the vegetables for about 5 minutes, I can add some tomato paste, cook that out for about a minute until the sauce looks like this. The meat's going to be cooked and it's going to have a slight orange or reddish tint to it. We're going to make it look even more red by adding a little bit of red wine. You could skip this if you wanted. Red wine and beef is a winning combination in my books. Cook until the wine is reduced, but not completely gone. Then add some stock, some thyme, a bay leaf, and some Worcester sauce. Quickly stir all those to combine and add a bit of all-purpose flour on top. This will help thicken things up. I used about 2 tablespoons or so. Once it comes to a simmer, lower the heat and cook. After about 20 minutes, we should have a really nice thick sauce. I can fish out the thyme and the bay leaf. Probably would have been easier if I tied it all together. And the filling is mostly done. I just want to check it quickly for seasoning. Way better to add our seasoning at the end of cooking. We can always add more. It's real hard to take it out. I needed to add a fair bit of black pepper and salt to get this tasting the way I like it. Last but certainly not least, a little bit of green goes a long way in this recipe. I'll just add some frozen peas. They'll defrost in the hot sauce. I've got my mashed potatoes, which I'm going to add a little bit of cream to so they're spreadable. It's going to depend a little bit on what type of potato you use to judge how much cream you need here. We want these to hold up, so don't add too much. And now time to assemble. I'm going to add a few scoops of my filling to an oven-safe pan. These clay or earthenware pans are perfect for this recipe. Spread everything out. You want to go about halfway up the pan. This gives you a nice sort of 1-to-1 ratio of meat filling to mashed potato. Our potatoes go on top, pushing from edge to edge. Once it's completely covered, use the side of the spatula to make little indentation. This increases the surface area, which means there's more area to get brown in the oven. I'm adding a bit of cheddar cheese and a bit of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Cheese makes everything better. And then into a hot 425 Fahrenheit oven for about 20 minutes. Or until you have a delicious golden brown crust on top. I'll cut this into slices and put it on a plate. We've got a perfect mix of a delicious filling on the bottom and crispy mashed potatoes on top. The little bits that touch the side of the pan are particularly delicious. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, smash the like button. Really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.